Being short in 2025 is a humiliation ritual. When you're no taller than around 6 foot and you're a man, you're really going to have a hard time. I've seen women talk about how 5'11" is short, how 5'10" is tiny, how they want men who are over 6'5". And obviously, those are women that you shouldn't necessarily take their word on it. More than likely they will date a shorter guy if he looks good enough. But when you couple together being short and being unattractive, it really is a death sentence. I'm 5'8", 5'9" on a good day, with shoes on and stuff. And, I used to always hear this, maybe like 10 years ago, like 5'9" is the average height. Maybe they were right. Maybe 10, 15 years ago, 5'9" was the average height. But the younger generations, man, they're tall. They're really tall. Like there's times I'm, doing stuff and then I see the school kids come out. And these school kids, like even the school girls, they mog me in height. They're taller than me. They're my height or a little taller, and it's kind of like, yeah, something's going on. There's something in the food, evolution. The next step into humanity is being is initiating where people my height are pretty much world news. Like you'll always see the older gentleman. You'll always see kind of like an older gentleman who might be short, and maybe he was lucky enough to get a kid, get a wife, settle down. But he really got lucky based off his era. Maybe back then his height was somewhat normal or average, and then you'll see him compared to you, and you're like, man, this guy's a dwarf. This guy's like 5'4". You know, and then during my heyday, when I was 16 or 17, 5'8" was decent. It was a decent height. I was never the tallest, but I was never the shortest. And now I'm the old man. Now I'm the old guy who's being transcended in height by the other people, by the other youngsters. It seems like a lot of younger Gen Z, and they're tall, man. They're tall. I'm older Gen Z. I'm right in between Gen Z and millennials, so I'm older. And just seeing all these youngsters and how tall they are, and even the young girls, man. Like it's not even like it's almost rare to find a short girl nowadays. Like you'll go and you'll see women nowadays in general, and they're all like 5'8" minimum. And that's me in Mexico, so I can't even imagine in a lot of other countries. Like Denmark or Netherlands or something, like they must be 6 foot minimum over there. And it's a humiliation ritual, man. When you're just this guy, and it's a humiliation ritual when you have to address somebody younger than you, who's taller than you. That's a humiliation ritual right there, man. You're getting loosh farmed right there. When you're like going out and about in the streets and stuff, and you see these tall ass kids, and then maybe they call you sir just based off your like aged appearance. It's not even because you're taller than them. You just are more aged. And it really is a humiliation ritual. It really is brutal. It really does hurt the soul to just realize that you're yesterday's news, man. You're short. Like I'm short now, man. I used to get called tall back like 10 years ago. People used to say I was tall. Like, wow, you're tall, especially because I would wear like shoes with like an inch or two in heel, and maybe it would bump me up to like 5'10", and people would be like, man, you're really tall, you're really tall. And now I never get told that I'm tall. I never get told that I'm tall. No one has told me that I'm tall in like the last 8 freaking years, because the new generations, they're just so much taller that I'm a dwarf. I'm a leprechaun. I'm like, it's like Lord of the Rings, and I'm a little dwarf. I'm Tyrion Lannister now. You know what I'm saying? And it really is a humiliation ritual, because when you're a shorter guy and the older you get, obviously you want to be respected, as in you don't want to be walked all over. But it's really hard for you to be viewed as masculine, as dominant, as a threat, as a competitor when you're short. It's hard to get into your, people, the red pillars, they'll always tell you, man, you got to be in your masculine aura, man. You got to be in your masculine frame, you know. And you know, how are you going to do that when you're shorter than everybody around? When you're the same height as everybody around, or you know, you're the same height as the women. You know, how's a woman going to take you serious when they're taller than you? You know, there's times I think I might be shorter than 5'8", you know, because I have this one homegirl, and she claims she's 5'9", and she's got like a little bit height over me, man. I haven't seen her in years, but like last time I saw her, like she had some height over me, man, and she claimed she was 5'8", and she was like, "What are you, like 5'7", 5'8"?" And you know, it was a humiliation ritual, man, to be seen with a girl taller than you, even though she's just a homegirl and stuff. But still, it's like it is a humiliation ritual, especially as the years go on, man. Like I said, maybe 15 to 20 years ago, you could get away with being 5'8", and you could be looked at as a respectable member of society, and even, you know, maybe even as a decent option. You know, maybe some women would look at you as a decent option, like, hey, you know, he's 5'8". But in today's day and age, man, good luck, man. You know, everybody's just getting taller. Everybody's into like these like these shoes that add height. Like you'll see these girls in those Doc Martin boots. You'll see these girls in these big ass boots, and you know, all the girls wear short like sport shoes, and they add like an inch or two. And you know, it's like girls don't even wear flip flops anymore, you know? So it's like, good luck, man. Everybody's just height mogging me now, you know? And the thing is, what's crazy is I was never too aware of this height stuff, man. You know, I never became aware of the height stuff until I started making videos and joining this kind of the side of YouTube, the sector of YouTube. I didn't notice that height was really that big of a deal, man. I used to believe like a taller girl would be okay with dating a shorter guy, and you know, and I used to think that, oh, if you're a shorter guy dating a taller girl, you're masculine. You really have self confidence in yourself. You know, I used to really believe that, man. So like there would be times where I would like try to get girls taller than me, not realizing that, you know, it really, you know, height really does matter, and you're wasting your time, you know, because I've always kind of been a eugenicist in the sense that, you know, I want to improve my genetic lineage. You know, you know, if I was to ever be able to get a girl, I would never want to get a girl uglier than me. That's why to me it's like, you know, when guys tell you, man, just get a 1 out of 10, bro, get a 5 foot girl, man, get a 1 out of 10 that's 5 feet tall. To me, that adds nothing to me. You know, I would love to date a woman taller than me, because you know what they say, your kids will never be shorter than their mom. And that's true. You know, that's true because, you know, my dad, you know, rest in peace to my father, but he was short, man. He was like 5'4", 5'6", you know, maybe 5'6" in his prime around there. And it's like my mom, she has tall brothers, you know, she has tall brothers. I have a lot of tall uncles. And I firmly believe that thanks to her genetics is it that I even made it to 5'8". You know, thanks to her grain of sand genetically is it that I've even made it to 5'8". And 5'8" nowadays is a dwarf. So, you know, imagine if my dad had gone with a girl who's way shorter than him, and, you know, and has short siblings and stuff. You know, I'd have probably been walking around at 5 foot even, you know, and it's brutal, man. It's brutal. Like, you know, when you're a short guy, you're never going to be taken seriously. You're going to be like the bagel boss guy. What was his name? The bagel boss. You know, where everybody, everywhere he would go, people would record him. Everywhere he would go, people would make fun of him. He would be a target. You know, like when you're a shorter guy, you're more likely to get victimized physically than a taller guy, because you have less presence, you have less mass, you take up less space. That's why, you know, if you're a shorter guy and you know, you don't have any sort of muscle, or you don't have any sort of aggression to you, you're really gonna have a rough life. You know, like, I mean, at 5'8", I don't think, you know, it's short, it's small, it's not big. You know, I look ridiculous when around taller people, but I don't think 5'8" is necessarily short enough to just be getting curb stomped on the freaking public. You know, get freaking humiliation to everywhere. You know, but it is tough, man. It is. You know, I definitely feel like I'm like the shortest of the short now, like especially with these new gens, like I'm telling you, like, I was getting my haircut a couple weeks ago. This happened before the last time I got a haircut. And I literally went to get my haircut at the same time the school kids get released out of school. And they all have like young faces. They all look like, little school kids and shit. But they're freaking tall, man. There was this kid that looked like 5 years old, and he was like my height. And I was like, oh my god, I am as short as the school kids now. I'm sure, and then the girls, the school girls, they would pass by me, and they were taller than me, man. They were my height or taller, and it's like, oh my god, dude, this is not it. I was like, this is a humiliation ritual. I kind of had to stand up a little taller. I kind of had to, try to get a little bit of size to me, because I was like, oh my god, I'm getting mocked. I'm getting mocked by school kids. If you're a guy that's taller, be thankful you at least don't have to deal with what it feels like to be short and to feel like you're an obsolete model of something. I definitely feel obsolete. Like 10 years ago, man, 10 to 15 years ago, 10 to 12 years ago, people would call me tall, man. Like, man, you're tall. You're tall, man. Cuz like I said, I would be 5'8" and I'd wear shoe lifts and stuff, or like shoes that add lift. And people would be like, man, you're tall, you're tall, you're a big guy, and now I haven't gotten any of that, man. I can't remember the last time I got told that I was tall. And I haven't gotten told that I'm tall anytime soon, because I'm not tall anymore. I'm I'm average to short now. And it's like I said earlier, like people used to really say like 5'8", 5'8", 5'9" is the average, bro. You're average. It's not the average anymore. I think it's fair to say the average nowadays has gone up to around 5'10", 5'11". And when you're 5'8", 5'10" is taller than you, man. These inches, man. Because it's not just your head that grows. It's your whole body. Your whole body grows with every inch. So every inch that you miss, there's someone out there bigger than you, stronger than you. You have like an inch less of muscle. You know what I'm saying? You're an inch less smaller than everybody else. And just being short, being on the shorter side of everything, it hurts, man. It hurts, especially when you're just getting older. The youth is passing you by. Your youth is passing you by. The youngsters are getting taller than you. They pretty much you became that old short guy from your childhood. You became that old short guy that you would be like, man, how's this guy this short and this old? That's me now. I'm 27 years old, 5'8". It doesn't even sound right. And it's like, when you're short, you're never certain opportunities just aren't going to be open to you. Like at 5'8", I was watching that '70s show, and like everybody in that show is hella tall. And that's a show from 20, 30 years ago. So it's like, if you're 5'8" in 2025, good luck getting any sort of acting gig. Good luck getting any sort of prominent position in the company, corporate. Good luck ever thinking you're going to be a girl's going to love you just for your size. Like there are guys out there who, they got lucky, man. They're taller, they're taller, they're better looking, and some girls may just like them for their height. I'll never forget this one time. This is back when I was in LA. I was driving for Uber, and I saw this couple across the street. I was like at a red light, and there was this couple across the street, and it was the most oofy, goofy, doofy, loofy looking guy ever. His face was completely chopped, but he was hella tall. He was probably like 6'2", and he had this really cute girl by his side, and she was like shorter. She was probably like 5'4", and they were holding hands, and they were both smiling, and I was like, okay, there's no way this guy didn't get lucky with the hype pill. Like the hype pill blessed him. Like there are guys who might say that being taller it doesn't help you in any way, shape, or form. And I could totally understand where being taller it's not enough. I could totally understand. But to compare yourself as a taller man to a shorter man, it's ridiculous. Just being taller, being bigger just helps you. It just grants you respect and authority. And when you're short, man, it's going to be real hard for you taken serious. It's going to be real hard for people to like fear you and respect you, because at the end of the day, people, if people don't fear you, people are just going to walk all over you. I'll never forget this one time a couple months ago. I was waiting to get some food, and there was this little kid, and he was like looking at me, and he's like, "I'm not scared of you." Like literally, he was telling me that in Spanish. He's like, "I'm not scared of you." And I was like, "What the fuck?" I was like, "What?" I was like, "Where'd that come from?" He's like, "I'm not scared of you." He just kept saying that, and he was acting like a little prick, And it's like, I mean, it's because of my height, It's because of my height. I'm 5'8". I'm not out here mean mugging people. I ain't got that, look on my face. Like, what you looking at, kid? I ain't got that, you know. And he just kept repeating it. He's like, "I'm not scared of you," you know. And obviously we all know if we went into an apocalypse and he'd fear me. But point is, I mean, that's what it is now. That's what it is now. When you're a shorter guy, when you're not this big intimidating guy, you're just gonna have a bad time, man. You're just gonna have a bad time, bro. You're just gonna get mogged everywhere you go. You're just gonna be a little dwarf. You're just gonna be, no different than Tyrion Lannister. But I mean, at least Tyrion Lannister was a Chad and he was rich and he had a big prominent name. Some of us are just gonna be short with nothing to show for it. Short with diseases, short with freaking melanomas growing on us and shit. It's brutal, man. It's brutal, bro. There's really nothing to gain from being short. And people talk about, there was that one cope, like, "Oh, short men live longer than tall guys. Good luck, see you in the grave." It's like, it's like, what? It's like, okay, ask yourself, 100 years a sheep or 1 year a lion? Be real, man. Like, come on, man. It's like there's no positives to being short. There really is no positives to being short. If anything, being short just gets you into trouble. Like in World War II, they would have like the B-2 bombers, I think that's what they would call them, and the ball turret gunners, which was the most dangerous position to be in because it was like right underneath the freaking airplane. They would put guys that were short in there. It would literally be like the max height you could be was 5'5" to fit into the ball turret gunner. And it's like, damn, being short was a death sentence. And even like I think the tunnel rats in Vietnam, you had to be shorter than like 5'8" or something. So, when you're shorter, you really do get signed up to like risky and dangerous things, man. There's no benefit to being short, man. Being short is a humiliation ritual. The thing is about being short is you could be charismatic, you could be good looking, you could have a good face, you could have good pH balance, you could smell like some good cologne, you could have good money, and there could be a guy that has every single thing that you have, except he's taller than you, and women will always pick that guy simply because he's taller than you. Society will always pick that guy. You could be 5'8", master's degree, and good looking, and then you'll go to a job interview and there'll be a guy who has the same freaking master's degree and he's 6'2", and they're gonna pick him. They're gonna pick him, believe me. Because like I said, there's nothing good about being short. And if you're not short and you're gonna comment, "Oh, there's nothing good about being tall, man. I'm tall for nothing." At least you're tall, bro. At least you're tall, man. At least you got that going for you. At least you have that one little thing that you don't have to struggle with. Because when you're short, man, like I said, on top of everything you go through already, add shortness on top of it. Add being shorter than the average girl on top of it. Add being shorter than the average freaking teenager on top of it. And we could cope and we could be like, "Oh, well, us short guys have more dense muscle mass and we could put muscle on faster than tall guys." But what's that going to help, bro? We live in an era with blades. We live in an era with projectile launchers. We live in an era where it's like, bro, don't, like, this isn't the freaking Stone Age, man. This isn't the fucking Coliseum days, man. Or, oh man, we could put muscle on faster. That doesn't mean shit. We live in an era where a 4'1" dwarf could point a launcher at you and launch projectiles into you and put you down. It doesn't, it doesn't matter, man. It's cope. It's just a humiliation ritual, bro. Like I've just been feeling it a lot lately too. Seeing all these women and just seeing how they're like around my height, or like I know that I'm, even if they're shorter than me, there's taller men. There's taller men, and they will always go with those taller men, and it's just brutal, bro. It's just brutal. And there's nothing fun about being short. Being short is just a humiliation ritual. That's why, like, it's just brutal. It's just brutal, man. And there's really nothing much else to say, except, to all my short guys out there, stay strong, man. Stay strong. Try to keep your head up. Because I know it's hard, man. Just seeing the younger generations get taller than you by the day, seeing women get taller than you by the day, seeing, not being respected as masculine because you're short gets tough, all that gets tough. But, you know, peace out.